You know, this dialysis with your father is taking a lot of time.
Are you serious? He is my father, and I will take care of him until the end.
I am 36 years old, been married for 8 years, and we have 2 kids together. I am also my father's only child, and he has been battling serious kidney disease for several years now. The past couple years have been absolutely brutal to watch, and now he requires dialysis treatments twice weekly just to stay alive. Initially, Dad could handle the trips himself without any assistance, but over the last year, he has been asking me to come along more and more frequently. His physical strength is fading daily, and I made the difficult decision that I would not let him face this terrifying medical situation alone anymore. I completely rebuilt my whole schedule around his treatment days. Tuesdays and Saturdays became non-negotiable. Saturday works out perfectly since that is my regular day off from work anyway. For Tuesday, I negotiated extensively with my manager to duck out early in the afternoon and compensate by working late into the night after we returned from the clinic. I have been loyal to this company for a solid decade, and my manager has witnessed my dedication and work ethic firsthand, so getting this special accommodation was not too difficult to arrange. But holy crap, the real nightmare began at home with my wife. The tension in our marriage had been building for a while, but this decision pushed everything over the edge. When my wife discovered I would be escorting Dad to dialysis twice weekly without fail, she went absolutely ballistic. She had never been particularly thrilled about the occasional trips I had made before, but she kept her complaints mostly to herself. Now that I had committed to this schedule permanently and made it clear it was non-negotiable, she could not contain her frustration and anger anymore. She bluntly told me I was throwing away my valuable time on my father, since nothing I did would ever make him proud of me anyway. She claimed he had already written me off, and I was wasting precious hours that I could be spending with her and our children instead. Here is the background you need to understand about why she said that. My dad built a thriving import-export business from absolutely nothing. He started with minimal capital and grew it into something really impressive over decades of hard work. He was seriously successful and accumulated substantial wealth throughout his career through smart business decisions and tireless effort. His lifelong dream was always for me to inherit the business operations and expand it even further than he had. But I was absolutely passionate about technology from a young age. I was completely obsessed with programming and developing applications. That was where my heart and interests truly were. After graduating high school, Dad pushed me hard toward business school or pursuing an MBA program, but I stubbornly enrolled in computer science instead. He tolerated that decision reluctantly, still assuming I would eventually come around and join the family company after getting the degree. But after finishing my university education, I accepted a position at a major software corporation across the country. Dad was absolutely heartbroken that I chose building someone else's empire instead of continuing the legacy he had spent his entire life creating. He constantly pressured me to reconsider and come work for him, laying on the guilt thick, but I kept refusing his offers. The tension between us grew with each rejection. Eventually, a couple years into my marriage, Dad confronted me one final time about taking over the business. It was an ultimatum, really. When I turned him down yet again, he completely exploded and threatened to donate his entire fortune to charitable organizations. He made it absolutely crystal clear I would be written out of his will completely and would not see a single penny. I still held my ground on my decision, even though it was incredibly difficult. Look, I was doing really well financially, even at that relatively young point in my life. I had purchased my own vehicle outright and bought my own home by age 29, which felt like a significant accomplishment. I felt genuinely secure that I could maintain a very comfortable lifestyle without depending on his fortune whatsoever. I made it explicitly clear to him that I did not need his financial support and would create my own version of success on my own terms. That confrontation seriously damaged our father-son relationship for quite a while afterward. We barely spoke for months. About 5 years ago, Mom died suddenly and unexpectedly from cardiac failure. It absolutely shattered Dad emotionally. I had moved out at 17 to attend university in another state and then found my own apartment after landing my career position. Mom had been Dad's constant companion and his rock for decades, and her sudden death just crushed his spirit completely. That family tragedy actually started slowly healing the rift that had developed between Dad and me. I began dropping by his place way more regularly to check on him and brought my children over to spend quality time with their grandpa. Seeing him interact with my kids reminded me of better times. Over the following months and years, he gradually retired from actively managing the day-to-day company operations and established a trust structure to oversee the business professionally. It was his way of letting go without completely destroying what he had built. My wife never really bonded with my parents, even from the beginning of our relationship. When Mom was still around, my wife would constantly dodge family visits, complaining that Mom was too invasive and overly judgmental about every aspect of our marriage. She would manufacture excuses to avoid holiday gatherings and family dinners. When Dad made his angry threat to exclude me from his inheritance, my wife began openly attacking my parents, labeling them cruel and vindictive people. She would rant about how unfair they were being to us. I repeatedly insisted she keep out of my family dynamics and let me handle my relationship with my parents. But she absolutely refused to stay neutral. She kept arguing passionately that Dad's threat was going to destroy our long-term financial security and eliminate our children's future opportunities for generational wealth. I repeatedly assured her with facts and figures that our kids' futures were completely protected, regardless of whatever Dad decided to do with his estate. But she would not accept that reality. She seemed almost obsessed with the money we were potentially losing. Now, with Dad requiring dialysis twice per week and me committing to be there, my wife transformed my entire existence into absolute torture. Every single Saturday morning, without fail, she would manufacture these elaborate demands, organizing dinner parties at our place, insisting on intensive house cleaning sessions that required my participation, scheduling family excursions to places the kids did not even want to go, or even demanding we handle grocery runs together when she could easily go alone. I kept patiently explaining that she could organize whatever activities she wanted for Sunday, but Saturdays were completely locked in for Dad's medical care, and that was not negotiable. She completely disregarded my boundaries and acted like I had not said anything. I would have to frantically sprint to collect Dad from his place, transport him carefully to the treatment facility, remain with him throughout the entire dialysis procedure, which took hours, drive him home afterward and help him get settled, and then race back to endure her passive-aggressive comments and full-blown emotional outbursts. And Saturdays were not even the only issue I was dealing with. Every Tuesday evening, like clockwork, she would execute the exact same manipulative routine. She would arrange elaborate plans to leave the house, visiting her relatives across town, reconnecting with old acquaintances she barely remembered, attending social gatherings she did not even enjoy, and she would just abandon all childcare responsibilities entirely to me. I had to simultaneously manage watching the kids closely, prepare their meals from scratch, take care of our youngest child's bedtime needs, and somehow complete the work commitments I had promised my boss I would finish that night. This was after putting in a completely full workday at the office and then spending several exhausting hours at the dialysis center with Dad. My schedule was absolutely crushing me. Dad suggested multiple times that he could just go with his dedicated medical aide instead, because he noticed I was perpetually anxious and constantly monitoring the time on my watch. When I would arrive to get him, I would literally message ahead telling him to be completely ready and waiting at the curb with his things so we would not lose precious minutes. He has got a dedicated registered nurse and a professional home health aide on staff, but I felt guilty as hell about not giving him genuine quality attention during what might be his final months. The commute from his residence to the treatment center takes roughly 30 minutes each way in normal traffic conditions. It used to be really pleasant and meaningful, honestly. We would reminisce about old family memories, crack jokes about cute things the grandkids had said or done recently, talk about current events. But once my wife escalated her manipulation tactics and controlling behavior, all I focused on was minimizing total drive time. I would drive recklessly fast and dangerously, utilize every back road and shortcut I knew, and aggressively pass other drivers just to trim off even a few seconds here and there. This was literally my only one-on-one quality time with Dad during the entire week, and I absolutely hated that I could not just chill out and appreciate these moments. But I refused to suggest he go with the nurse instead of me. Dad had explicitly and repeatedly said he wanted me there with him personally, that sharing this difficult time together mattered deeply to him. I had sacred obligations as his only son, and I was not going to abandon those responsibilities no matter how much pressure I faced. I genuinely could not tolerate my wife's increasingly toxic behavior any longer. Something had to give. Update 1. The situation deteriorates rapidly. Every single day became increasingly unbearable in our household. My wife was deploying every manipulative tactic she could think of to discourage me from fulfilling my caregiving duties to my father. Her reasoning was consistently identical every time we fought. Dad had already excluded me from his estate and designated everything for charity, so continuing to invest time and energy was completely pointless. Why was I sacrificing our family time for someone who had rejected me? I could not comprehend her transactional mindset about family relationships. Do we genuinely only do things in life based on what tangible benefit we will receive in return? If somebody's parents lack wealth or significant assets, should their children just completely desert them in their time of need? After enduring her toxic behavior and constant criticism for months straight, I finally retaliated with my own harsh words. I pointed out directly that she would not be inheriting anything substantial from her own parents either, since they were middle class at best. So why did she maintain such regular contact with them? She completely lost her mind at that comparison. She screamed at the top of her lungs that her parents had provided infinitely more emotional support than my selfish father ever had. They had always encouraged her dreams and ambitions and would never threaten to disown her over career disagreements. She demanded I never draw comparisons between her parents and mine ever again. These explosive confrontations became our routine pattern, erupting practically every Tuesday and Saturday after I returned from the clinic exhausted. With each incident, the arguments escalated in intensity and ugliness. What made everything substantially worse was she began screaming at me directly in front of our children without any shame. Our kids would witness these terrible fights and sometimes cry. I even overheard her bad-mouthing Dad to them privately, attempting to manipulate their feelings and turn them against both me and their grandfather. When I confronted her about poisoning the kids' perception of their grandpa, we had another massive blow-up that lasted hours. At some point, I just completely surrendered trying to have rational discussions with her anymore. I stopped engaging in her arguments entirely. I simply started treating her like she was invisible, responding to her provocations with silence. What other option did I have at that point? I was not going to neglect my dying father just to satisfy her selfish demands. I did not care that he had threatened to remove me from his will. He made that threat because of decisions I had made that disappointed him. I rejected joining his company and pursuing his dream, and he was forced to transfer his life's achievement to institutional management by strangers. That must have absolutely broken his heart and crushed his spirit. That business was essentially his child, and he had to relinquish control of it because I would not continue the family legacy he had built. He had complete justification for being furious with me for years. Sometimes I genuinely questioned whether karma was punishing me now for all the pain I had caused Dad over the years. Meanwhile, Dad's medical condition continued steadily declining week by week. He could barely walk unassisted anymore and required physical support getting in and out of vehicles safely. I used to request he come outside before my arrival to maximize efficiency, but I stopped worrying about punctuality entirely. I started entering his home to carefully assist him walking slowly and safely to the vehicle, and after treatments, I would help settle him comfortably in bed and wait until he was peaceful before leaving. He was also experiencing increasing breathing difficulties, so I ensured we moved at whatever pace felt comfortable for him without rushing. While driving, I completely stopped exceeding speed limits and drove cautiously so he would not experience additional physical stress or anxiety. I did not care about arriving home late anymore because rushing never improved the situation anyway. I would face that toxic woman and her attitude regardless. At least this more patient approach meant Dad could feel comfortable, valued, and loved during his treatments. My more relaxed attitude and blatant disregard for her demands infuriated my wife even further. Eventually, she issued a direct ultimatum: choose between my father and her. It was that simple in her mind. I attempted to explain rationally that Dad was not going to survive much longer given his condition. Considering his rapidly deteriorating health, it was painfully obvious he had very limited time remaining on this earth. Her response was shockingly cold and calculating. In that case, you had better choose wisely between someone who will be in your life forever and someone who is dying soon anyway. I was absolutely stunned by how callous and heartless that statement was. I looked directly at her and stated firmly, "You know what? I would absolutely rather choose my dad than someone as heartless and self-centered as you have become." She gathered her belongings quickly and walked out that same night. I did not attempt to stop her or chase after her. She needed time to calm down, and truthfully, I desperately needed separation from her constant negativity. With her physically absent, I was managing all household duties, complete child care, Dad's medical care, and my full-time career, and I genuinely felt relieved, like honestly relaxed for the first time in ages. Her absence was legitimately peaceful and almost therapeutic. 2 days afterward, she had divorce documents professionally delivered to me by courier. I somewhat anticipated this might happen, but did not expect it to happen that quickly. I was initially shocked when I opened the envelope, but underneath that shock, I was genuinely relieved about it. I did not contact her or attempt any negotiation. I simply signed the documentation carefully and returned it immediately the same day. The surprising element was she did not request custody of the children at all. That was literally my only major concern going into this. She obviously did not want the responsibility of them. When she received the executed documents back, she called me absolutely hysterical and screaming. She was yelling about how I could just sign them without contacting her first and pleading for reconciliation. Was not I going to fight for our marriage? It was almost comical, honestly. Then her mother seized the phone aggressively and started lecturing me that I should have acted like a man and fought to salvage the marriage instead of just passively complying. Real men fight for their families, she said. It was nearly funny to me at that point. Why would I pursue that path? She initiated the divorce proceedings, so I simply granted her wish efficiently. I was genuinely relieved to be finished with her without prolonged conflict and expensive legal battles. I even mentioned pointedly that she had abandoned our children and clearly did not want any parental responsibilities going forward. She confirmed coldly I could retain all marital assets, including our 2 children. She wanted absolutely none of it. Her mother claimed my wife was still young enough to start over and did not want the burden of children limiting her freedom and future options. I confirmed that arrangement was completely acceptable to me. I was sincerely glad to have my kids remain with me permanently. Over the subsequent 3 months, the divorce proceeded through standard legal channels at a reasonable pace. There were custody evaluations by court-appointed professionals. We had to submit complete financial documentation and tax returns, all the standard legal requirements. My wife did not challenge me on custody rights whatsoever, and since my income substantially exceeded hers by a significant margin, we settled on minimal child support obligations. She requested a modest cash settlement from our combined savings account, approximately $20,000, which I provided without argument just to expedite the finalization. After 3 months of legal procedures and paperwork, the divorce became officially final. It was definitely a relief emotionally, though I worried constantly about how my children were handling everything. They missed their mother deeply, particularly our younger child, who did not fully understand why mommy left. Managing all responsibilities independently while maintaining demanding full-time employment was legitimately challenging, but I was absolutely committed to making it succeed for my kids. Update 2, a life-changing decision. I made a choice that completely transformed our entire situation. I relocated into Dad's residence with my children. Hands down, the best decision I could have made under the circumstances. Dad gained daily interaction and bonding time with his beloved grandchildren, and they got to bond deeply with their grandpa during his final time. Dad already employed a full-time professional home health aide who, with a modest salary increase, agreed to provide childcare during my work hours. It was absolutely ideal. Someone trustworthy supervising my kids right there with Dad, overseeing everything from his chair, all in his own comfortable home. Witnessing Dad's face brighten and light up when he interacted and laughed with my children was absolutely priceless and heartwarming. The kids completely adored spending time with their grandpa, and he treasured every single precious moment with them. My ex-wife clearly had not anticipated this elegant solution to my child care problem. She had assumed divorcing me would make my life completely unmanageable, that I would struggle helplessly juggling everything: child care, my father's intensive medical care, household management, and demanding career responsibilities. But I had arranged everything perfectly and efficiently. Everything was functioning smoothly like a well-oiled machine, and I was definitely coming out ahead in this situation. That divorce was honestly the best thing that could have happened to me and my kids. Update 3, losing Dad. Dad passed away last week during the night peacefully. He went to sleep content and happy after playing board games with my children and simply did not wake up the next morning. The physician confirmed he died peacefully in his sleep without any suffering. Both the attending physician and Dad's healthcare providers told me repeatedly that Dad had been significantly happier and more engaged after we moved in together. They indicated it likely extended his life by several additional months. He had been ready to give up entirely before we arrived. Losing your final remaining parent is absolutely devastating emotionally, but I am deeply grateful he spent his remaining months surrounded by family and genuine joy. My children are also grieving his loss deeply, but Dad instilled valuable life lessons in them during their precious time together. They shared with me that Grandpa taught them about accepting difficult realities and continuing forward with strength because life does not pause for anyone's grief. Hearing such mature perspective from them filled me with immense pride. They are genuinely my foundation and strength during this period of profound grief. Several days after Dad's death, his attorney contacted me, requesting I come to his downtown office for the formal will reading. I explained it was not necessary. Dad had already informed me years ago he had donated everything to the charitable trust, and I had completely accepted that reality. I even inquired whether I needed to vacate Dad's residence soon, assuming he had probably donated that property to charity as well. The attorney actually chuckled and firmly insisted I attend the meeting in person. When I arrived at his office, the trust representatives were already present and seated. The attorney had summoned everyone involved in the estate distribution. When the attorney began reviewing the will officially, I completely broke down emotionally. Dad had designated everything to me: his business interests, his property, his complete estate. Everything was mine. I was his exclusive beneficiary. I asked the attorney whether Dad had modified this recently, thinking perhaps he had updated the will after I began providing his care and we had moved in together. The attorney smiled gently and explained, "You were always his beneficiary. The will was never modified from the original." I absolutely lost control emotionally. My father had never actually abandoned me. Perhaps he had threatened to exclude me, attempting to pressure me toward joining his business, but he never actually executed that threat legally. I was still emotional when the attorney tried to comfort me. I expressed how devastating it felt knowing I had disappointed my father for years, yet he had always supported me unconditionally despite our disagreements. Then the attorney shared something incredibly meaningful. "Your father was genuinely proud of you. He told me multiple times he respected that you pursued your passion despite his pressure, that you were prepared to sacrifice generational wealth to follow what you loved. He deeply admired your principles and integrity." The attorney continued, "You now control the business operations entirely. If you choose, you can reclaim the company from trust management and operate it directly yourself. I have determined that is precisely what I am going to do. Dad supported me in his way throughout all the difficult years. Now it is my opportunity to honor his memory properly. I am going to reclaim the company and expand it to the magnitude he always envisioned." I returned home and informed my children about their grandfather's will. He had even designated funds specifically for them that they will access when they reach 18 years old. That evening, we visited his grave with fresh flowers and simply spent time there in quiet reflection. It is an incredibly emotional period for me, but I feel spiritually connected to Dad in ways I never fully appreciated while he was living. Update 4. Guess who returned? Approximately a month following Dad's passing, I officially assumed control of his business operations. My first action was submitting my resignation from my software position. Then I leased out my previous residence because my children and I determined we are remaining in my parents' home indefinitely. The kids feel spiritually close to their grandpa here, and this property contains all my formative childhood memories. Once information circulated publicly that I had inherited Dad's substantial estate, I suddenly received numerous unexpected visitors, distant relatives I had not encountered in years, former friends from high school, neighbors I barely recognized. But the most astonishing visitors were my ex-wife and her parents. They arrived incredibly dramatic, weeping and claiming they had absolutely no knowledge of Dad's death, or they absolutely would have attended the memorial service. Her parents went on extensively about what an exceptional man Dad had been. My ex-wife embraced the children tightly and sobbed about how desperately she had missed them. I confronted her directly. "If you missed them so intensely, why did you not visit them even once during the last 8 months?" She claimed she had gone to our former residence, but found it secured and empty. Complete fabrication. I challenged her further. "Were you not concerned about your children when you discovered the house was locked? Did you not consider it important to contact me and verify they were safe?" She had absolutely no response to that. Her parents immediately interjected, suggesting we should forget previous conflicts. They argued that now, with Dad deceased, The children would be unsupervised in this large house during my work hours, and they required a mother figure, so reconciliation made sense. I literally laughed directly at them. The children needed her most desperately when she walked away from them. Now they have adjusted to her absence, and I have absolutely zero interest in resuming any relationship with her. My ex-wife started crying dramatically. Her parents quickly excused themselves and left us alone. She grasped my hands and begged me to reconcile, insisting she loved me and missed being present in the children's lives. I looked at her coldly and stated, "You do not love me. You love the fortune my father left me. You and your opportunistic parents are here because you want access to my inheritance." I do not regret those words whatsoever, particularly after she labeled my father selfish and terrible during our divorce proceedings. Absolutely no way was I permitting this woman to obtain even a fraction of Dad's hard-earned fortune. She became extremely defensive and insulted. Her entire demeanor shifted dramatically. She claimed she had been pleading sincerely because she loved me, but now she would pursue what was legally hers. She had not requested alimony during divorce proceedings, but now she demanded half of my assets, or actually half of Dad's estate. I informed her she could pursue whatever legal action she preferred, but I would fight her ruthlessly before surrendering a single dollar. She screamed various insults at me and departed angrily. I immediately consulted my attorney regarding this potential threat. He reassured me her legal standing was essentially non-existent. The divorce was legally finalized 5 months before I received the inheritance. Under law, anything inherited following divorce finalization is individual property and cannot be divided maritally. Additionally, the children reside with me, so she possesses no custody leverage. However, he cautioned me to be vigilant about permitting her unsupervised time with the children. She could potentially manipulate them emotionally, file for custody modifications, and then leverage them to demand financial support for their expenses. I am extremely appreciative of that professional guidance. I am going to carefully monitor any interaction she has with the kids. I am also investing substantial quality time with my children currently to help them process their grandfather's loss, so they do not seek emotional comfort from their mother. Since assuming control of Dad's company, I possess significantly more scheduling flexibility and work-life balance. I am arranging to take the children on a vacation to the Caribbean islands. They absolutely deserve it, not because I am attempting to spend extravagantly, but because I finally have the availability I never had previously when I was balancing my corporate career and Dad's caregiving needs. Regarding my ex-wife, she has not initiated contact since that final visit. I am assuming she is consulting various attorneys, attempting to locate someone who will accept her baseless case, but I am completely unconcerned. I have my children, my father's legacy to honor, and finally, genuine peace in my existence.